So I talked a little bit about prices. I'm not going to apologise for the fact that these are not in the same currency, because for these two down here, the currency represents where you can actually buy these from. They're not globally available. If you want to buy a kit like that, you have to go to Germany. If you want to buy a fab at home, you have to buy it imported from the States. This is, I think, the equivalent of Microsoft versus Linux. The costs here, there is no cost for intellectual property licensing, etc., etc. These costs are basically driven, and these are prices for kits. You have to put the labour in to assemble them, but these are the prices of the physical components you need to make a machine. So that's it's not far off a tenfold reduction in price. I don't know whether these people are quaking in their boots yet, but having watched what happened with open systems and particularly with web servers, I think it's quite possible there are going to be some markets where these things are just going to explode. Yeah, fair point. So this is a community, and I'll talk a little bit about the community in a minute, but there are a few notable people along the way, and obviously it talks about Adrian Boyer. The pair of us went down to Cardiff to see Adrian Boyer speak a year ago now, and the main reason we went was because I'd said to Hannah, well, I'm not going to lay the money out if trying to build a rep wrap now is like trying to build Darwin was 5 years ago. I want to see one working. And he gave a talk like this, and he had his machine sitting, because it was a proper university presentation area with a lectern and there was a space underneath. He had his machine set up in the space underneath. It was so quiet you couldn't hear it working while he was presenting, and he talked for an hour, and at the end of it he took the part that he'd been printing off. And I thought, yes, this technology has now come of age. Back in the days of Darwin, he's got a completely different rep strap, and he's obviously got a size complex. But this guy Vic Oliver was one of the most active people in the community, and to me said, yeah, this is pretty global, because there weren't many people who picked up on this in the UK. A lot of the action was in Germany, was in America. And there was this guy, the other side of the world, interpreting what was on the RepRap website and building stuff and feeding back his findings, his experiences, etc. Now, this bloke, I think, has to be... he's Mr. Quality, Mr. Push the Boundaries. Whenever you think you've done something good, you'll find that Chris Palmer's done it before and done it 3 times as well as you could ever hope to do it. But yeah, if there was a hero here, I think he would be my hero. Joseph Prusa, when I had the 4 machines up, that machine is called Prusa Mendel. And he's the only person who's got his name on the machine. And finally, I wonder if he might be here. I'm assuming Jean-Marc's not here. But Jean-Marc is based in Milton Keynes, and he's so keen to promote RepRaps, he goes up and participates in a group in Sheffield because it's his nearest active group. And he also runs the website eMakerShop, where if you're trying to source stuff in the UK, certainly printed parts, that's the best place to go. So I was talking about Linux, and I must admit, in 2002-03, I quite liked the sound of Linux, and I tried to get it installed on my computer. And about week 12, I gave up, and I apologise if the quality of that's not particularly good, but it's a sorry story of a bloke having lots of time in front of his computer and still not getting it to work. And the sort of evangelism and the zeal, and there's only one way of doing it. Fortunately, the RepRap community is not like that at all. And I can remember the number of times I posted stuff onto discussion boards in 2002-3, asking for help, having exhausted Mr. Google, etc., and got told nice helpful phrases like RTFM when there wasn't a manual, and that laptop's running Windows 7, which I think is how I reacted to the Linux community at the time. But the RepRap community is not like that in my experience. You post stuff, you get help. Somebody once got a bit shirty because I sent somebody a private message, and the bloke responding would only reply if I sent him a public message so everybody else could see the answer. But I can see the sense in that because everybody learns from it. I basically didn't want to embarrass him, that was why I'd sent the message, but if he was, because something he suggested didn't seem to work properly. So what do you need to build a RepRap? You need electronic skills, unless you're going to buy your electronics ready-made. And even if you do buy them ready-made, you've got to do bits to connect the electronics to the rest of the machine and make sure they're working properly. So even if you don't have the electronics manufacturing, making printed circuit boards, soldering, etc., you've got to know your way, your way around a printed circuit board to test it's doing the right things. I think these are now called resistant material skills. And if you go to a girls' school, you can't do them at all. You have to do textiles. So there's a bit of sexual discrimination going on there. But I think because there's health and safety issues, and you have to have a room that can't be used for other things, these are probably quite rare skills at most other schools these days. So you've got to be able to drill holes in the right places, cut stuff to the right length. If it's not quite to the right length, adjust it. And then there's can anybody tell me what that skill is? Because that's a different skill.
Spokes for wagons or something.
Yeah, there's a bodger. Yes, that's so. The original definition, or a bodger originally, was somebody who made stuff out of green wood. The benefit being green wood's stronger than dried timber. However, according to the dictionary now, bodging is a job done of necessity using whatever tools and materials come to hand, which, whilst not elegant, is serviceable. And bodging is not the same as botching. People get the two things confused, but you've got to be able to think on your feet, adapt, adjust, cut new parts because the parts that are provided don't work properly, they don't interface with other parts you bought from a different source. So, how many people have got that much stuff in their toolboxes, garages, etc.? Anybody who's got one of those gets a real prize. That's a hot plate. It's a hot plate. We originally got that because we were planning on using surface-mounted components on the printed circuit. However, we haven't done that because the latest generation of electronics you have to solder the components in a good old-fashioned way. But this is actually really quite useful because there are quite a few components where you have to put in captured nuts into the plastic components. So you stick the nuts on there, they warm up nicely, and they just go in and they stay put. So a very useful tool. For the £7.50 it cost off eBay, I'd recommend it very highly. Sorry?
High precision omelette.
Yeah, well, it does that as well when you're hungry. Resistant material stuff down this side, all pretty standard. You do need to be able to use tin snips because there are the flags on the that stop the machine grinding into the end of the axes are made out of bits of tin can. And these are special metal scissors that cut tin can basically. Fortunately, my dad was a craft teacher, so in his shed I managed to find a set without having to go out and buy some. I think most of the rest is pretty standard stuff if you do a little bit of DIY, etc. And then you've got the electronics bits. And we did buy the digital calipers because they were tenner out of Napiers, and a component that you need to program the chips on the firmware. But we made ours on our kitchen table using that stuff. This is not, I mean, when you go and look up Chris Palmer's stuff on the places he inhabits on the web, he's got milling machines, lathes, he's probably got a shed the size of this room in his back garden with all the engineering tools that you can require. But you can get yourself going with a reasonably basic toolkit. So, a plus point, yeah, I think there's the basis of a movement there. But you also, I think, need some personal qualities. So, there's 3 P's here. Can anybody give me the 3 P's? Patience. Precision. Through precision. It's an atomic clock. That's the bit that matters. The more
Perseverance?
yes, or persistence, yes. So the more accurate you are, the better the quality of print you'll get, the more accurate you can be. But persistence is for me is the key one, because if you haven't got the ability to have the thing not work, put it to one side for a day, come back and go at it with the same enthusiasm, then I think you might struggle. And I was talking to a gentleman here earlier on who's had his sitting on a shelf for a year because he's just not had the enthusiasm to carry on. It's a big job to get hold of the bits unless you happen to stumble across somebody who's got kits available. Your only option at the moment is to buy the parts from different suppliers, and that can be from Europe, it can be from the States. In certain instances you've been waiting for people to print you parts. When you've actually got all the bits, they come in 3 broad categories, and I think that's a conservative estimate. I think you can get the whole lot together to a working level, but within 3 days. The wiring and the motors, again, I think that's a conservative estimate. Possibly a day and a half for the following week. But there's a factor in there for because this is the point at which you start troubleshooting, really. If you've got it and it's not working properly, you've got to work out why. And then having got it so that it's working after a fashion, you've got the task, which is akin to if you're squeezing out your bath sealant to get it coming out nice and uniform all the time. And that, I mean, I haven't done that. I've just watched Hannah do it, and she's got the patience of a saint. Yeah, you've got to be very persistent there. And having got a basic working machine, there are then other things that you can do. The most relevant one, I think, our machine uses a plastic called PLA, polylactic acid, which has a relatively low melting temperature. The other common plastic is ABS, which is the stuff Lego bricks are made out of. And ABS has a higher melting temperature, and there's an effect that as you put layer on layer and the plastic at the bottom cools, it curls. And in order to avoid that, you have to print onto a heated bed. So the first extra we're going to go for once we've got our baby rep wrap built is a heated bed. So because we've got a big reel of ABS that we bought, thinking that this thing would print ABS straight out. And there's a bit of a cautionary tale here, because you read all the stuff, and we read it all avidly several times. And when our machine was approaching readiness to print, I bought some ABS. It's 50 quid a reel, so it's not an inconsiderable purchase. And we tried printing with ABS, and we couldn't get anywhere. And we went onto the discussion boards and, hey, this is what we're trying to do. And the advice came back, use PLA. And that was when it emerged. You needed a heated bed, you needed to be able to run the machine at a much higher temperature, etc. So there is a lot of learn as you go along at this stage, but the more people do it, and people are doing it at quite a rate now, the more knowledge there is out there.